Today, the most richest girl in Lagos was going to marry her poor driver, who she insulted many times for being poor. And the reason behind this marriage will shock you. Subscribe to the channel, and let's start the story. The music was soft. The lights were warm. Flowers were everywhere. It looked like a dream wedding. But something was wrong. Kamara stood at the altar, wearing a beautiful dress, her hands shaking. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying all night. Her lips didn't smile. People whispered as the groom stepped forward. It wasn't a rich businessman. It wasn't a prince. It was Tao, the former driver. The same man she once made clean her heels in public. The same man she once accused of something terrible. Now he was standing beside her, about to become her husband. He didn't smile either. He looked straight ahead, like he didn't even want to be there. The crowd didn't clap. No one understood what was happening. Kamara's father sat in the front row, silent. His head was low. His hands trembled. What kind of wedding was this? The priest looked confused, but started the ceremony. Kamara's lips barely moved when she said, "I do." Tao didn't say anything at first. Then slowly, "I do." But deep inside, they both knew the truth. This was not a love story. It was a deal. A secret deal. A forced beginning. You think you know what happened, but you don't. Because this marriage didn't start with love. It started with lies, betrayal, and blackmail. Long before the strange wedding, Kamara was living like royalty. She was the only daughter of Chief Bako, a billionaire who owned oil fields, shopping malls, and hotels across the country. Their mansion was a palace. Marble floors, diamond chandeliers, guards at every gate. Kamara never heard the word no. She was beautiful, rich, and completely spoiled. Servants feared her. If breakfast was late by 5 minutes, she'd throw the plate. If someone looked her in the eye, she'd call it disrespect. No one dared to cross her, because they knew Chief Bako would protect his little girl at all costs. Then one day, a new driver arrived. Tao. He wasn't like the others. He was poor, yes, but he walked with quiet confidence. Tall, well-built, and polite. He did his work without begging for her approval. That made Kamara furious. During a weekend brunch, Kamara stepped out of the car in front of her guests. She pointed at her heels and said with a fake smile, "Tao, clean this. It's embarrassing." He looked up at her, paused, then slowly knelt and wiped her shoes. He said nothing. Everyone laughed, but deep inside something broke in him, and something dark began. Tao kept working at the mansion, always quiet, always calm. He drove Kamara to parties, fashion shows, shopping malls. He opened doors and carried her bags. He never raised his voice, never looked angry. But something about him made people look twice, especially girls. Kamara began to notice it. Whenever they went to town, girls would stare at Tao. Some even smiled at him. It burned her inside. How could a poor man like him get attention? Especially when she was the one in designer clothes and luxury perfume. She didn't understand it, and the more she noticed it, the more bitter she became. One afternoon, as Tao parked the car and waited, Kamara turned sharply toward him and snapped, "Why do you keep staring at me?" Tao looked confused. "I wasn't," he said calmly. She stepped closer, furious. "You think I can't see the way you look at me?" Tao finally looked her in the eyes and said, "Just because you're rich doesn't mean you're better than everyone." His voice was steady, honest. But to Kamara, those words felt like a slap. Her lips trembled. For the first time in her life, someone had put her in her place. After Tao spoke those bold words, Kamara couldn't sleep that night. Her pride was wounded, her ego bruised. She kept replaying his voice in her head. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you're better than everyone. How dare he say that? The next morning she woke up angry, and like many spoiled people when Kamara felt powerless, she looked for ways to control others. That afternoon she stormed into Chief Bako's office, crying and shaking. "Tao tried to touch me," she said, her voice full of fake fear. "He waited until no one was around and he grabbed me." Chief Bako's face went red with rage. "Where is he?" He roared. Tao was dragged in by the guards, confused, scared, but not broken. "I didn't do anything," he said calmly. "She's lying." Chief Bako didn't listen. He ordered Tao to be fired immediately. A call to the police was made. Tao was minutes away from being taken in. But just then, Tao pulled out a USB from his pocket. "There's CCTV footage," he said. "Check it." The footage showed the truth. Tao had never touched her. Kamara had made everything up. Chief Bako stood in silence. Kamara looked away. Later that night, Bako paid the police to keep it quiet. No headlines. No scandal. Tao didn't argue. He packed his bag and walked out of the mansion, without looking back. But one thing was clear. The war had quietly begun. Months passed. Tao was gone, and Kamara never spoke of him again. Life inside the mansion returned to normal, or so it seemed. Behind closed doors, Chief Bako was struggling. A risky investment had gone wrong. A deal with foreign partners fell apart. Lawsuits came. Then the banks got involved. Slowly, everything began to collapse, like a castle made of sand. First, the luxury cars were sold. Then the second house. Then the third. Kamara didn't understand at first. "Where's my Bentley?" she asked one morning. "Sold," her father muttered without meeting her eyes. She laughed. "Fine, I'll take the other one." "There is no other one," he said quietly. Soon the staff was gone. Her personal chef, her makeup artist, even the driver who replaced Tao, all gone. She had to brush her own hair, cook her own meals, and do her own laundry. It was a nightmare. The media found out and made it worse. "From billionaire to broke!" the headlines screamed. News channels played old clips of Kamara in designer gowns, side by side with videos of her now walking out of a budget salon in slippers. Paparazzi followed her, mocking every move. One night, she collapsed on her bed and cried into her pillow. "I can't live like this." Chief Bako tried to comfort her, but he looked 10 years older. The pressure was killing him slowly. Kamara was starting to learn the value of money, of silence, of pain. But deep down, she was still Kamara, and the real test hadn't even begun. Chief Bako had reached his limit. Debt collectors were now threatening him every day. Old business partners refused to return his calls. His name, once respected across the country, was now laughed at in boardrooms. And that's when Mr. Juma showed up. He arrived in a black car, escorted by guards. An old man, once Bako's greatest rival. Years ago, they had fought over contracts, land, and power. Bako had won, but now the tables had turned. Mr. Juma entered the living room slowly, leaning on a silver cane. His leg was crippled from an old accident, but his mind was sharp. "I can clear your debts," he said, sipping tea calmly. "I'll pay off everything. Your name will rise again." Bako's tired eyes lit up. "What do you want in return?" Mr. Juma smiled slowly. "Your daughter." Bako froze. "Kamara?" "Yes. Let her marry me." Silence filled the room. Chief Bako didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. From the top of the stairs, Kamara had heard everything. She rushed down, trembling with rage. You're selling me!" She screamed. "To that old man?" Bako tried to explain. "Kamara, it's not what it looks like." But it was. Kamara ran out the door, heart pounding. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew exactly who she was going to find. Rain poured from the sky like it had waited for this moment. Kamara ran barefoot through the muddy streets, her long dress soaked and dragging behind her. Her hair was a mess, her mascara running down her cheeks. She didn't care. All she could hear was her father's voice and that old man's wicked smile. She couldn't let it happen. Not that marriage, not that life. So she ran to the only person she could think of, Tao. It had been months since she saw him last. She didn't even know if he'd opened the door. But she had to try. She knocked hard, again and again, until finally the door creaked open. Tao stood there in a worn t-shirt, surprised, silent. Kamara was shivering, mud all over her legs. "Marry me," she said breathlessly. "Right now, please." Tao blinked, as if trying to figure out if this was a dream. "You... what?" "I said marry me," she repeated. "My father wants to give me away to that crippled old man. I can't do it." Tao stared at her for a long second. Then his voice turned cold. "You mocked me. You insulted me. You destroyed my life with your lies." Kamara stepped closer, trembling. "I know. But this is my only way out." Tao didn't answer, and in that heavy silence, everything between them, past and present, stood still. But Kamara wasn't done talking, and Tao wasn't done remembering. Tao closed the door behind Kamara and handed her a towel. She sat on the edge of a wooden bench, dripping wet and breathing hard. He stood across from her, arms crossed, silent. "You really came here to ask me to marry you?" he asked quietly. Kamara nodded. "Yes. I don't want to be anyone's second wife. I don't want to be sold like a bag of rice." Tao shook his head. "Now you care? After what you did to me? After you almost ruined my life?" She looked away. "I was angry back then. I didn't mean..." "No." Tao cut in. "You meant every word. You used your power to crush me, and now you want me to save you." Kamara's voice turned cold. "If you don't marry me, I'll scream. I'll tell the world you forced me again." Tao's heart dropped, his hands clenched. "You're still the same." She didn't blink, and in that moment Tao realized something painful. She didn't come for love. She came for escape. But he also knew if she lied again, he'd never survive it. So, with a heavy heart, he said the words he never thought he'd say again. "Fine, I'll marry you." The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low over the small building where Kamara and Tao stood. It wasn't a church. It wasn't a fancy hall. Just a quiet, dusty room with plastic chairs and peeling paint on the walls. There were no guests, no flowers, no music. Only a priest holding a Bible, looking from one face to the other in confusion. Kamara wore a plain white dress someone had found last minute. It didn't fit perfectly. Her makeup was gone. Her eyes were puffy from crying. Tao stood beside her in a wrinkled shirt and old shoes. He didn't look at her once. They stood like strangers. When the priest asked Kamara to say her vows, she barely whispered, "I do." Tao hesitated. His chest rose and fell. Then finally he said, "I do." It was done. They were married. But there was no kiss, no celebration, not even a smile. As the priest signed the paper, Kamara looked down at her hands and wondered how everything in her life had led to this moment. This wasn't a love story. This was survival. And survival always comes with a price. That night, the new bride came home. Not to a mansion, but to a small one-room house made of brick and tin. Kamara stepped inside slowly, her heels clicking against the cracked floor. She looked around in disbelief. No chandelier, no AC, no maid waiting with a towel. Just one wooden bed, a plastic fan, and a faded curtain hanging across the middle of the room. Tao walked past her, quiet as always. He pointed at one side of the curtain. "That's your space. Mine is over there." Kamara blinked. "You're joking." Tao shook his head. "This is what I have. This is what you asked for." "But we're married," she whispered, almost offended. Tao looked at her, his face unreadable. "We are married, but we are not in love, and I don't trust you." He grabbed a thin pillow and laid a mat on the floor beside the bed. Not even on it. Kamara stood frozen. She had never shared a room with anyone in her life. Now she was sharing it with a man who wouldn't even look at her. She sat down on the bed, hugging herself. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, two strangers tried to sleep in silence. They were now husband and wife. But would pride keep them enemies forever? Or would pain teach them something deeper? Next episode, who will change first? The broken driver or the fallen princess? Comment below your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the second part of this love-hate romantic story.